What's going on, everybody? Aidan from Birds vs. Boys here, and the Eagles' first preseason game is a wrap. It's in the books. They did lose, and the streak for the Baltimore Ravens continues for 24 straight preseason wins. Pretty remarkable and odd. But the Eagles did have a lot of positives from the game. A lot of the positives came from the young guys you're seeing for their first action, which was great. So let's recap it all. Before we do, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube page. We've had a few interviews with people who are boots on the ground at Cowboys training camp for our full shows and just going over everything going on with training camp with both the Eagles and the Cowboys. So we've had a ton of content there leading up to this game where the Eagles had their first game, Cowboys had their first game. A lot to talk about. It's all on our channel right there. So make sure to subscribe and let's get into it. Like I said, they may have lost, but there was a lot of positives, and the positives came from the young guys who were playing. Starters didn't play. Ravens didn't play their starters. So we got to look at the guys who were drafted. And let's start with the man in the middle. It's just kind of funny. Jalen Carter, at one point in Daniel Jeremiah's first mock draft, was the first overall pick to the Bears before they made that trade. He falls to the Eagles, and on his very first snap, he really only played 3 snaps. He wasn't in there very long. He immediately beats the offensive lineman. He gets the pressure on the quarterback and forces an errant throw from Josh Johnson. It's like it took seconds of him being on the field to feel the impact that he can make in an NFL game. It's remarkable, and it's exactly what we expected. In a one-on-one situation against the offensive guard from the Ravens, who happened to be his teammate at Georgia, and we'll get into that in a second, beats him handily, gets into the backfield, forces a QB pressure. It was exactly what you expected when you draft him. And you ask, wait, why did this kid who did this for Georgia for 3 years fall to the Eagles at 9? Why did you guys let this happen? It was just so funny. And the reason why he fell to the Eagles, a lot of it was the stories behind the scenes with him. Well, after the game, they're asking him about why his first play, his first pressure, everything like that. He said he knew the move and the technique that the offensive guard was going to do because they were teammates and he saw it on film. So he was already watching film, was prepped, and knew what to do and beat his guy based not only on his physical ability, which we know about that, but also because he was prepping and knew the technique that the offensive guard was going to use. It's just hilarious. Like all these bad things. And then on one play, you're like, oh, yeah, that's why they drafted him. So that was really cool to see. He only, like I said, you really didn't see Jalen Carter much. He was like not a starter, but kind of is. So he played like 3 snaps and that was it. But obviously made his impact and it was phenomenal. Some of the other guys, though, in the same draft class, Nolan Smith, just one quick comment on him. He was involved in that play with Jalen Carter as well. He doesn't seem as small. I was really worried about him being undersized, and that was the knock on him. Seeing him line up in games, maybe it's the fact that he goes no gloves and just like strong arms, but he just doesn't seem as small to me as you would expect. So that was my main takeaway seeing him. I was like, oh, I was prepared for this guy to be like a project where we have to put some weight on him. He doesn't look like, in the sense of that, like you're going to have to wait around for him to kind of build some muscle, like a Marcus Smith situation, in order for him to make an impact. He felt pretty impactful and pretty big right away. Some of the other guys, though, Sidney Brown, the second round pick, I think is going to be a stud. We've talked about him back during the draft. He's a guy who coaches are going to fall in love with, and that's going to be key for him in a safety spot that doesn't have a lot of depth right now. So he could be playing very soon. All of his 9 tackles came in the second half. So clearly he has some work to do in terms of making his way up, but immediate impact. He has, the story about him and his brother growing up in like the foster care and everything like that. So you never really have to worry about hustle. You never really have to worry about hard work. And he's just an instinctual player. You saw that on a few of the tackles that he made. Lining up the safety spot, you see him just coming up, flying at full speed, straight edge, and is able to cut the legs of the runner on a play where it was like, if he doesn't make that tackle, who else is going to make it? Our guy, Chase Sr., had it pointed out, took a few screenshots of one play. He's lined up back at safety. The play goes to one side, it reverses around to the other. He's able to go one way, reverse, and make the play on the opposite side of the field. It just seems like he knows where to be and just has instincts that you can't teach. And that's pretty much on display if you're making 9 tackles in your first action in an NFL game, where you just know where to be already week 1 of the preseason. That's phenomenal. Again, that is a position where Reed Blankenship has his position locked up. It's kind of funny. He goes from 6th round pick to all of a sudden he is now the starter and is not even playing in preseason games. But there is potential for Sidney Brown to make an impact right away. So that was really cool to see. I think that'll be huge. Another guy, we talked about Reed Blankenship being a 6th-round pick last year. Well, Eli Ricks wasn't even drafted this year. There was, for the majority of his college career, you thought he was going to be the former Alabama cornerback. He goes undrafted, gets picked up by the Eagles, and he is making an impact right away. He had a pick 6 and a pass breakup as well. First action, pick 6, jumped the route perfectly, beautifully. And he's really tall. He's really lean. If you even saw him after the game, he's just kind of lanky. So he has the ability with those pass breakups to kind of get his long arms in there, which I know coaches must love, where, he's able to cover more ground with his long limbs. So another guy where you're saying, all right, undrafted, you don't expect him to make an impact right away, but could he? James Bradbury and Darius Slay are pretty, solidified, but Greedy Williams is on a 1-year deal. He did play, and you've got Kaylee Ringo as another corner too. So it's like, Eli Ricks kind of comes into play because there's not a ton of depth there, and he could be a backup right away. If there's any injuries, you could see him on the field if he's going to continue to produce. Like I said, he's probably not the first option. Keely Ringo played pretty well as well. So just those guys, but Greedy Williams, again, just a 1-year deal. So after this year, you'd expect Eli Ricks to kind of come into that. Josh Joby's been having a good camp as well. So it just seems like drafting Alabama and Georgia corners just doesn't seem like a bad idea. Kaylee Ringo, Eli Ricks, bring them in, see what happens. It's totally fine with me. The running back position I thought was interesting. I think if you're a fantasy football player, this is going to be interesting for you as well. Kenny Gainwell did not play. And I would love to see how they actually rotate through all three, pretty much 4 of these guys. DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny did play. They looked really good. DeAndre Swift only had 2 carries, but he looked really good. And I'm just not saying that because of the visor and the number 0, where he actually looks cool. He's also very effective, had a 20-yard run, everything like that. So I'm glad that he's on the team. It was just interesting to see those 2 play without Gainwell, because I'm like, all right, so how do we actually rotate this trio? Who is technically RB1? Who is going to get the workload if it's the 4th quarter and it's a tight 24-20 game and you're trying to run some clock? Who actually touches the ball out of the backfield? And Trey Sermon played as well. So they have 5 running backs that you can depend on. But I really think that there's 3 that are going to be rotated through heavily. And I'm still interested to see how that rotation plays. Gainwell didn't play. Those 2 new guys did. So we'll see with that as well. And then just the last thing, the punter battle, a punter battle in the preseason. It's going to be interesting because it did cost the Eagles partially in the Super Bowl. I don't think that there was anybody who really gave himself a leg up yesterday. They had 3 punts. So that was one thing that people are concerned about. I'm going to be honest with you. I just need one of those guys to win the battle. I can't put too much focus on that when Jalen Carter is winning in his first NFL snap. But all in all, I thought a lot of the rookies play well. You heard Russ Tucker talking about Tyler Steen looking good in camp and looking good in the game. So it really just seemed like all of the draft class played really well, which is exactly what you want to see, because even if these guys aren't making an impact day one, there's lines and avenues for them to make an impact right away this year through backup roles, if there's injuries, anything like that. And soon after, in year 2, like we're talking about with Reed Blankenship, who goes from being a 6th-round pick, being a backup, to all of a sudden being your starting safety this year, not even putting the pads on for week 1. So the possibilities are there for a lot of talented kids, no matter where they were drafted, with Jalen Carter, who fell to 9, Nolan Smith, who fell to the end of the 1st round, Eli Ricks, who fell out of the draft completely, and Keely Ringo, who fell to the 4th round. All of these guys played well, including Sidney Brown, who could, potentially be the best player out of all of these guys. So it's phenomenal to see the guys on the field. We are excited. Big day for the Eagles. Big day for the Cowboys.
Chris Hansen here, and I'm going to need you all to take a seat right over there and check out Birds versus Boys.
I think you're completely right here, and I hate it.
Yep. Hey, idiots. Stop doing dumb things. I got 2 phones. Upside alert. Upside alert. I might go insane.
I think you're already there.
There's no hope. Hope is gone.
If this was an AFC North podcast, we'd be done in 15 minutes.
Bob Hope. I'm going to drink bleach.
That
Be the team you promised me you were going to be this year!
This is the Consciously Hopeful podcast.
I'll be watching.